we will have workshop number 6, Land Sea Interactions and Values of Local Community. And this last concluding workshop will be moderated by no one else but a person who has already been quite a few times on this stage today, has done a brilliant job so far, and I'm sure that she will entertain and inform us as well during this session. So let's welcome back from Baltic Environmental Forum, Kristina Veidemane.
Yes, good afternoon and welcome back to the workshop number 6, which is dedicated to land-sea interactions and values of local community. In a way, it continues already discussion which I took part previously about involvement of stakeholders, and where we also emphasize the role of local stakeholders and regional stakeholders in maritime spatial planning process, but also this session is particularly dedicated to interests and values of local community. Why we organize this workshop? We would like to share our experience and methods which we used in addressing key challenges in tackling into account land-sea interactions in MSP. And when I mean we, you mainly will hear presentations from Land-Sea Act project, which is one of the co-organizers of this event. We would like to highlight the local value perspective in addressing land-sea interactions. And this is also the main focus of our case studies, which will be presented during this workshop. And as keeping traditions of previous workshop, we would also like to have some interactive discussions at the end of the session to develop key recommendations or get message from you for us as a project partners to have these key recommendations which we can later present in our outcomes and integrate in our outcomes. So for case studies, discussions, interactions, and we hope that we will deliver some key messages which tomorrow I will be able to present at the overall plenary session. Now I would like to introduce the first speaker of the session. It's my colleague for long years, and I think many people around the Baltic Sea already know Anda Ruskule. She has a background in geography, environmental science, and she has been working on maritime spatial issues already about 10 years. But her special interest is MSP based on ecosystem approach. And she is one of the motivators, drivers, promoter of such innovative concepts as ecosystem services, as marine green infrastructure, and also looking at how to take up landscape values in planning of coastal land-sea interface. And in the Land-Sea Act project, we are jointly developing a case study for South Kurzeme region and how it is done and what are our preliminary outcomes. She will be presenting you in short presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to present you a Latvian case study experience from the Land-Sea Act project in addressing local values. And our case study area, as Kristina mentioned, is southwestern Kurzeme, a coastal stretch of 120 kilometers starting from Latvian and Lithuanian border up north and including terrestrial part up to 10 kilometers and adjacent marine waters of Latvia. And our aim of this case study is to develop spatial solutions, how to balance national interests of offshore wind energy production with the interests of local communities and preserving landscape and boosting coastal tourism and recreation. So actually landscape is the center of our case study. And so this scheme illustrates the workflow of our case study, starting with the stocktaking activities, including interviews with local municipalities about their plans in tourism development and analyzing various policy documents and supplementary contracted study on coastal visitors, which serves as an input for our study. And then our study involved two major blocks. One was a biophysical assessment of our case study is focused on landscape qualities and ecosystem service supply, which was carried out by our expert team of Baltic Environmental Forum. And so this started with identification of landscape and seascape units, which actually leads us to this place identity of the sites, as each landscape unit is has its name and connection to the place. And so this was followed by intensive field work on the terrestrial part as well as in the sea. And assessing these landscape units, also including various study of different spatial data sets, and using all this information to assess each of this landscape unit with regard to particular landscape quality criteria and ecosystem service supply, resulting in a large set of different maps, which we used for our further work. But this biophysical part was complemented by intensive stakeholder engagement to get the perspective of local people and other stakeholders on our case study area. And so this included two stakeholder events, actually face-to-face, real-life events. One we managed to organize before COVID came, and another one was using a short window of opportunity in last autumn. And so followed also by other different tools and online surveys which complemented this stakeholder engagement activities, about which I will tell you further on in the next slides. So in all results we integrated in our Landsea Map Explorer, specially developed for South Kurzeme case study area, and used also later for scenario building, impact assessment, and development of optimum solution. So in my further presentation, I will concentrate on the stakeholder engagement methods which we used for exploring values of local communities. And so starting with the first stakeholder workshop in Liepaja in 2019, where we had an intensive discussion on different challenges, how local people and stakeholders preserve this with regard to land interactions, but also testing a web application which we developed for assessing this landscape units, what we have identified, so stakeholders had the possibility in a group work to assess particular landscape units with regard to 4 criteria, like landscape diversity, scientific, scenic views, attractive landscape elements, and uniqueness. And so this information was, so this was actually like a learning process for stakeholders about these landscape qualities, and at the same time serving for us as a verification of our expert judgments and collection of local knowledge. Another tool what we used, also tested at the first time at the same stakeholder workshop, was an online survey for getting information on recreational sites important for people. So this was an online survey where respondents were able to locate a dot, which is for their most beloved site for recreation, and indicating also for what kind of activities it is suitable. And so this survey, in total we collected 80 sites, and it complemented our expert assessment on recreational potential of this area. And further on, next major block of stakeholder involvement was in scenario development, starting in the second stakeholder event, where we discussed alternative pathways or scenarios for achievement ambitious goals for offshore wind energy development for 2050, and also some potentials for tourism development for the same time perspective. And 4 stakeholder groups were trying to place this area suitable for such for this achievement of this energy production goals. And as a result, we gain 4 scenarios, which we use later for now our expert team to develop optimum solution. And optimum solution was development of this optimum solution involved impact assessment of the proposed scenarios, and here we again applied ecosystem service approach and looking how particular location, what kind of habitats it impacts, what in relation, what function, what it might lead to, what loss of what kind of functions, and that from that to loss of certain ecosystem services, and then we tried to connect this ecosystem impacts on ecosystem services to well-being of local people. But for assessing for impact on well-being, we wanted also to know how important these different well-being categories are for people in Latvia, and for that purpose we carried out public survey on contribution of coastal ecosystems of the case study area to human well-being. And this was a survey with nationally representative sample, including 1,000 respondents, 90 of which were people from case study area, and including different questions. And the survey was conducted just recently in May this year, and so we just have got our first. We have got results from the survey, and we are starting to analyze them. But so the first results, what we can already illustrate here, are that from all the well-being categories which we have proposed in the survey, the most essential also for local people and people outside living outside of this area are leisure activities or recreational potential of this area, and followed also by enjoying existing nature and health and satisfaction of life. So this is what we also take further on in assessment of impacts of our scenarios, and adding a weight to certain categories of well-being based on this survey results. And all our results we place on this Landscape Map Explorer, also the scenarios what we are developing and the final results, and they will be all available there for using this link included in the presentation, which will be also available for you. So thank you very much and yeah, that's all from our case study.
Thank you, Anda, for a very interesting case study. I hope that colleagues and participants of this workshop find it interesting. At least each time when we prepare the presentation, we find the new nuances about local values and local factors which should be taken into account to find the balance between new sea uses and interests of local people to have a potential for recreation, leisure, and protection of nature. Now I would like to give a floor to the next case study. It's from Estonia, and floor would be given to Printsmann from Tallinn University. By background, she's geographer, same like me, cartographer, human and culture geographer, working currently on as a landscape researcher at the Center for Landscape and Culture in School of Humanities at the Tallinn University. Very often people who work on these aspects come with environmental background, but and work for environmental field. I'm very happy that Annu is actually representing the social side of the topic. She has been involved in numerous projects concerning valuing and assessing valuable landscapes in Estonia and across the borders, developing thematic plans on county level, not only national level, And recently her experience is focused on coastal zone management issues, how to ensure sustainable development of coastal zones in Estonia. And the same topic, but with new aspects and new dimensions, of course, is addressed in the case study of Estonia. And that's why I would like to give a floor now to Anu. Hello, Anu. Tere in Estonia.
And thank you very much for giving the floor. So I'm going to take you to North Estonia and explore the issue how to address blue growth in a marginalized area. So the area is approximately 100 kilometers from our capital, and a large part of it consists of Lahemaa National Park, which is exactly today, it was created exactly today, 50 years ago. So we have a big celebration throughout this summer in Lahemaa. And it is a very attractive environment, having peninsulas and bays, and it has been the hotspot of summer tourists for at least a century. So it doesn't have very big spas or huge recreational facilities, but small-scale summer cottages and houses, and you can also rent them. We are Airbnb and also otherwise. And the problem in the area is that the population is in decline. So the red villages that you see have close to 0 inhabitants, and the green areas are up to 3,000. So actually, there are a number of villages in the coastal zone that actually have 0 registered inhabitants. And the right-hand side map shows the share of elderly people. So so the proportion for elderly goes up to 75%. So there can be villages that have 4 people and 3 of them are pensioners. So we have the problem that how to advance blue growth. And in Estonian MSP, that is now in public discussion round, the aquaculture hotspots are in Western Estonia, around Saaremaa Island. Nature protection is also, Lahemaa National Park has also CE areas, but the majority of the hotspots for nature protection are also in West Estonia. Cultural heritage is maybe more commonly developed, but it's mainly consisting of shipwrecks that can be seen sometimes if you dive, but some of them are also not allowed to be seen by tourists. Then mineral extraction is also very limited in Estonian marine areas. And also renewable energy is also focused in and around Western Estonia. So actually what blue growth sector can be advanced is only coastal tourism. And this was our hotspot. The methods, as every normal planning procedure, we start from stock taking. And also that it's not our first project in the area. So I will be combining at least the results of 2 projects in here. So we have done document reviews, interviews, focus groups, questionnaires, scenarios, just chance encounters while doing fieldwork, meeting people outside and asking them some stuff and some nice stories to follow. So as I think already has been said, that storytelling is a big part of gathering the valuable things people appreciate. So we would like to think of it as collaborative approach to planning. And then what do locals value in this area? What you can see also on the photograph below, there was one very good answer, indescribable specificity. So I guess it can describe any spot around the Baltic Sea or in the world. But sort of the mixture of history and maritime culture and nature. So this would be what people value. And it's also that it's not so crowded. So we actually want perhaps more tourists in the area, not like our German colleagues that don't like maybe so many tourists. And also that the community is rather close-knit, but active people and the living environment is friendly. And what are the perceived problems? I saw 3 points that there are threats to characteristic coastal historical and architectural milieu, that if you plan or develop new stuff, it might be not appreciated by locals. Aging and population decrease, as explained before, too many restrictions, because if it's a national park, there can be some obstacles to development, and conflict of old-timers and newcomers, or summer cottage owners as well. Then there is a lack of care and consideration. In some opinion, that there is a lot of garbage, that the taxes are high, there are pollution issues, and so on. And then the social part as well, that there are not enough workplaces, mobility is restricted. You have to have your own car to be available to be able to move in the area. Seasonality, and also that the tourism services are not so well established, or if they are established, the information is hard to get. And our results are not back yet in, so we also used the scenario approach, that whether more development are required by locals, or they want to have more calm development in the area. So the results are not back yet in, but we will hope to see where the preferences go. And 2 of our conclusions is that it would be actually a good idea, as we have very many small craft harbors in the area, to concentrate as land-sea interactions. This is really where this happens, that people meet the sea. That you can have your own boat, you can have a restaurant, you can walk in the sunset, you can appreciate military heritage, you can see new architecture, meet others. But also these developments, that how many and how large these harbors are, can cause problems in community. And the second thing is how to empower the local population, and landscape stewardship has been sort of our idea to push forward. That you have to give agency to the local people, some knowledge that they have, and maybe what scientists and university people can provide them. And this should end up in care, that local people want to take responsibility together with municipality and county and state, how to develop and go with life further, so that the landscapes have been taken care of. And thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you, Anu, for your case study explanation and really good thoughts about what the locals value. I think it will be very also good idea later to reflect in our workshop. But now let's go to Polish waters and Polish coastline. And we have a speaker, researcher from Polish Academy of Science, from Institute of Oceanology. Hello, Tymon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, Tymon Zielinski. He's a researcher and Polish Academy of Science. And particularly his research field is on climate change and also on environmental aspects. And as we all know, climate change issues are becoming more and more actual everywhere, also in the Baltic Sea level. And Tymon is also participating in UN working group dedicated to these issues. But today we will hear about planning in Gulf of Gdansk and looking at barriers and opportunities for sustainable tourism, taking into account local cultural values. So Tymon, floor is yours, or screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm the one who needs some help with slides. I was unable to do it on my phone. So good afternoon, everyone, once again. Maybe we can go back to the first slide for a second. Yes, this is the title. As you can see, I represent quite a team. This is our team from the IOPAN, and Joanna Piwowarczyk is the leader of the study, and I'm Tymon Zielinski, the last one on the list, who is actually giving this presentation today. And I hope to stick to time like Anno did. It was fantastic. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, our study area is the Gulf of Gdansk, but also the Vistula Lagoon. Unfortunately, I cannot show you exactly what I'm talking about, but you can see the cities of Gdynia, Gdansk, and Elbląg. So this is more or less the area we're talking about. And there is this funny peninsula that is called the Hell Peninsula, spelled with one L. So no worries, and this is the area very special for Poland by many reasons, historical reasons, cultural reasons, and also the fact that we live in the area helped us to run the study. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so the procedure, actually it's still an ongoing study. We had a delay in doing this study because of the pandemic conditions, of course, and we lost some months last year in doing it. That's why we're still doing it. But if you look into point 2, we have the 2 contrasting sub-case studies, and we have the semi-structured interviews and workshops. All of them go online. And we discussed the cultural values of both the Gulf of Gdansk, which is the big area that you can see there, and the Vistula Lagoon is the small lagoon that is actually a border line between Poland and Russia. We determine the barriers that people were discovering. We did it via emails and phone consultations. Then we structured the barriers, and then we went to the workshops for discussing the barriers and their interactions and built the influence maps. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, how do we define the cultural value? We actually define it very simple, in a simple way: connection, how people are connected to marine ecosystems and spaces. But in our study, we provided them with total freedom of defining the cultural values. It was up to the people, and we obtained a number of different definitions, but didn't bother us at all. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay. So environmental culture-oriented tourism, these are like 7 points that I can share with you at the moment. As I said, we have an ongoing project. So relatively low use of cultural values in the touristic offer. This is one of the issues that emerged from the study, which is strange, but unfortunately, we did expect that. Touristic offer dedicated to mass and relatively low demanding tourists. This is something that we unfortunately observe on a daily basis. The local culture is not presented in an attractive and modern way. It's sort of like an old-fashioned promotion, if there is the promotion. The culture is in decline, both the coastal fisheries, which used to be very popular here, and the marine culture. Apparently, this is due to the lack of vision of the local governments, and there's no interest in that. There's too much pressure on the peninsula, which is quite obvious because it's a lot of natural protected areas, but they're very much disregarded. And the environmental culture-oriented tourism is important, but the 3 S, that is sun, sand, and I'm sorry, what is the third? Sun, sand, sun, sand. I'm sorry, I forgot the third S, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Offer is basically the top offer for all of us. Next slide, please. So the groups of barriers, we had 70 individual barriers and 12 groups for the Gulf of Gdansk, and the most important groups were pressures coming from tourists and investors. We all who live in the area, we constantly complain about the number of tourists in the so-called season. Shortcomings in large infrastructure, we are talking about inefficient road and rail infrastructure, which is especially true for the Hel Peninsula. Then for the Vistula Lagoon, we had 68 individual barriers, also grouped into 12. And the most important ones were the management and administration of the region, external managerial priorities, promotion of the region, and social relations. External managerial priorities, that all actually mean that people come from, let's say, Warsaw and buy land, buy buildings, and make business just for 2 months and do not really care about the rest of the year. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is one of the maps of implications that we produced, and as you can see at the very end here, we have the need to improve railway transport. That's what I said. The large infrastructure and lack of integration between collective and individual transport. So, in this very case, the transportation, so the transport infrastructure was the real problem, and please look at the very left, and then we have no traveling by sea, disturbed balance between the capacity of the coastal environment, sensitivity to disturbance, and the need for space for tourists and so forth. So these are the maps that we produce at the end of each workshop last week, actually, and 2 weeks ago. And the next slide, please. So what do we have as for the implications for marine spatial planning? Much of the discussions are focused on land-sea interactions and coastal marine landscape. That's true, but the MSP does not really reach far beyond the water. And these are a lot of formal jurisdiction issues were raised between the local authorities, larger authorities. So this is definitely perceived as the formal jurisdiction is perceived as a real barrier. Low social sustainability of the processes. Majority of our respondents have neither heard or participate in the formal planning processes. Possible difficulties to embrace the elicited values by formal MSP processes, limited awareness of space, and we need modern tools, interactive case modeling, for example, and proactive approaches based on social sciences. That's our conclusion. And with the next slide, I will complete my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'm open to answer questions if I can, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tymon, for your presentation and different perspective. It was a little bit surprising for me to hear that in Poland, majority of respondents whom you addressed haven't heard about planning in Poland. Do you have any reason? Why is it?
We actually haven't analyzed the workshop discussions yet, but my response would be that, well, okay, I'll put it this way. One of the common things that have been raised by many people from different workshop groups was the 6 years period. And the last 6 years period, that means 2015, where we changed the government in Poland. And unfortunately, the planning issues have been very much neglected in last 6 years in favor for, if I have money, I can pretty much do what I plan. So the plans are very much individual, dedicated to people who can buy, pay, and so forth. So I heard these information while doing the workshop that the local authorities are losing control over decision making in terms of plans. Also, the national park areas are not a barrier anymore. So if you can afford it, so to speak, you can even go into the park with your infrastructure that you plan to build. So I would say it's a Warsaw-oriented problem. I would put it this way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tymon. It doesn't sound really very promising for your Polish local communities, but let's hope that at least we can learn from German example. So my colleague Damian Arikas, he will present example from Siemen Island, where you try to balance nature conservation needs and tourism development needs in one of the hotspots of Baltic Sea for Germany. Hello, Damian.
Hi.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, thank you, Kristina, for the kind intro, and hi, everybody. Nice that you have me here. I'd like to talk a little about our case study, which is happening on Siemen Island. Siemen Island is in the north of Germany. I will show a map, and my name is Damian Arikas. I work at the Baltic Environmental Forum in Hamburg, Baltic Environmental Forum Germany, and I am an expert for climate topics. So, Siemen Island is situated in northern Germany in the federal state of Schleswig-Holstein. And as you can see on the right side, it is, it has several surf spots. I will talk about those spots later, but just to introduce them here, because we were involved with these with the issues around tourism and especially nature conservation and surfing on the island, because Siemen Island is a very popular surf spot. They also hold World Cups in kite surfing there. Some information about Fehmarn. It's the third biggest island in Germany. Almost all German islands are very close to the mainland, except for one island in the North Sea, a very small one. But Siemen Island is connected to the mainland with a bridge, which at some point is a little special because tourists and other people can reach the island very easily by private cars. And this causes, it has some advantages for the tourism industry, but also causes some difficulties because the issue of traffic is a very complicated one, actually. And Fehmarn Island is, there is intensive tourism happening. Most of those tourists come from Germany itself, but some also from Denmark or from other countries. And we have almost 2 million overnight stays on this small island. which is quite a lot. And this trend, making holidays in your own country, staying in Germany, it was already there before COVID, but it has grown since then. Of course, because you were not allowed to travel to other countries. So last summer, even though there was a lockdown until May, beginning of June, I think, the tourist numbers were even higher than the years before, which is quite extraordinary. So let's have a look at the coastline of the island, the use of the different coastal sectors of the island. As you can see, Siemen Island is very intensively used by agriculture. So a lot of the coastline is also covered with fields and agricultural spaces, and then there are open green spaces. Some of them are nature habitats. And what is also quite interesting is the huge amount of space that is taken by campsites. So we can say that Siemen Island is an island where camping is very, very popular, and it has almost the same area of campsites than the area of beaches, which is quite astonishing. And here you can see an example of a nature area, a nature protected area. And this pink dots, these are camping sites. The green one, within the green ones, there's this nature protected area. And there are also like areas in the water where surface and water sports people shouldn't go. And these areas are, as you can see below, there are signs where you should not like continue your walk on the beach. And then there's to protect birds from like being disturbed all the time. There are organizations that put up these small islands, which I have here a photograph of below, where the birds have the opportunity to build their nests and relatively undisturbed. So this is also quite important an important matter on Siemen Island to secure undisturbed areas for wildlife, which is very, very important because of the over-tourism and the very intense use of the coastal areas by tourism and water sports. This is an example how water sports activities are regulated by the municipality, and this is also a part of our project where we identify these surf spots, or these surf spots were already there. They are, as you have seen on my first slide, located all over the island, depending on the wind direction. People go there to do surfing. And the idea is to offer these spots to concentrate the surfing activities there in order to be able to leave the other areas or the other coastal regions in peace, so that wildlife can, develop there without being disturbed by surfers, because it's a character of surfing people that they tend to come with their little vans and their equipment, and they like going to undisturbed nature, which is of course fun, but for nesting birds and other wildlife, it can be not so very brilliant. So to avoid this, the municipality within the project, we thought of developing an app. It's only an idea yet. It will not be completed within the project. But the idea is to connect this app to the parking spaces at the surf spots, So, for example, if you're a surfer and you live in Hamburg, as I do, you could like check out for the weekend. Is there a possibility to go surfing on Fehmarn? And you could book a parking space and within this app, and you can see where spaces are available yet, and if no space is available, maybe you just stay at home or go to another place. So traveling is avoided if it's not necessary. And if you have booked a space, you can go to Siemen Island and go to this surf spot and open a barrier at the parking space to have access to the surf spot. And all the people that are not like having this app or this have not booked a place, they are forced to park outside these surf spots, which is not allowed and will be punished. So it is a way to get this a little under control, because otherwise the numbers of surfers will rise. So this is basically it. I would like to hear some questions if there are any, and thank you for your attention.
Yes, hello, back from Riga stage, and thank you, Damian, also for introducing yourself. You are my colleagues that I almost really forgot to introduce yourself because I felt so familiar with you. So,
no problem.
As you see, we are not in Carnival. We are following COVID rules here in Latvia. Me and my colleague Anda has joined on stage. And I hope you still see us very well and also hear us very well. And we would like to invite you to use one of the platform's tool, Word Cloud. And we would like to ask all of you to answer on the following question. So try to name the main local values or interests to be reflected in LNC interface. So which values should be taken into account? So please insert 1 to 2 words, and we would later see what are the key aspects. Some of them you heard in presentations from Anu, some you heard from also from Damian or Tymon, and so on. Now we would like to I would like to introduce the discussion panelists, which we are having invited 4 speakers, which presented now case study. But additionally, I have invited also Andrea Morf from Sweden. You were very active already in a session on stakeholder involvement, but also this respecting local values means stakeholder involvement process is very essential. And second, I also would like to greet Guido Kartu from Estonia. We know each other from earlier projects on maritime spatial planning in Pärnu Bay, and you also assisted us in transboundary aspects when we in Latvia developed our own national maritime plan. So welcome on board to our panel discussion. And in our panel, we would like to address 2 questions. And these questions will be also posted in a comment session where we ask other panelists to give us own thoughts. In that way, we could create recommendations. So, and first question is, which approaches and mechanisms can be applied to take into account these values in decision making? So, means social values, and what might be good and successful examples. And the second question which we would like to address in this half an hour is why and how could new players and developers respect local values in this coastal zone? So 2 leading questions in this half an hour. So we heard examples which already illustrated some approaches and mechanisms from Estonia, Latvia, Poland, also from Germany. And might be, now I could ask Andrea to reflect, what do you think about these examples and these approaches, how you see them as a researcher? Can they really be applied in decision making, these values which are generated in these case studies?
Thank you very much, Kristina, for the word. I hope I can give at least some answers from a researcher's perspective. What is very clear to me, and also by the eminent panel represented here, is that social sciences is important to provide information that is necessary for coastal planning. And I think this is something that is really needs to be more integrated into the very much still focus on natural sciences and technical aspects. But what is also needed is to combine the technical, the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities, where we have the cultural heritage as an important link, and the place also linking everything together. That's one observation. Another observation is, as you already have suggested, involving the problem owners. And in that sense, I would say it's the locals who own the problems, but it is also the outsiders who own the problems. And in that sense, trying to engage, relating to your second question, trying to engage the outsiders more into the local context is really important, and let them create this kind of connection to the place. And maybe here digital tools can actually supply some kind of a means to do that, even if everybody's not all the time in the same place. And one thing that has also beat me is it's really important to link the three sustainability dimensions: the jobs, the infrastructure, the social infrastructure, the relations, and the natural values. And in that sense, what I'm now coming into more from the political sciences perspective and management perspective, there are still huge, so to say, challenges to link the different planning systems over the shoreline, because that's where, at least in Poland, things don't seem to work. That's where in many countries, like, the systems meet up but don't connect. And here I think there is still a lot of work to do. I think that's so far my answers. I hope you got something from my reflection so far and can link into it, and then we can have play another round of balls towards each other.
Thank you, Andrea. You mentioned you want to add something, Tymon, or you say hello?
No. I wanted to add to that, if that's okay. I fully agree, as a natural scientist, I fully agree with Andrea that sustainability approach, combining natural sciences and social sciences, is the key. For me, what was very interesting and sort of depressing, so to say, was that not even one person during the workshops mentioned the potential climate change impacts with the sea level rise. So we were talking a lot about building hotel, wellness, spa on the beach. And it was always discussed that the problem is with taking our space, but nobody reflected on the fact that if we don't do anything in 20, 30, 50 years, this hotel will be gone anyway. So, and we, natural scientists, talk about it a lot, but we do not reach people. So this is obviously the perfect case for joining the forces and, being sustainable in our approaches. So I fully agree with Andrea.
Okay, thank you for this comment. I know, Anu, in your School of Humanities, you particularly put attention to social aspects, sustainability aspects. Do you see that your outcomes or your findings from researchers are taken into planning process in Estonia? How do you see the bridge between research, science, and case studies to the practical decision making?
Well, yes, as working at the university, it's always that we are in between the policymakers and the local inhabitants. So it's interesting always to connect these two. So we work with both of these stakeholders, so to speak. But maybe for me, the biggest issue is that MSP is such a high-level generalization that to take into account local people values is extremely difficult. And we have worked together also with Estonian MSP planners. We have held joint meetings. Very often the same people attend. So as in the previous session, it was also asked that how to reach these people who are not attending the meetings or who are not engaging in email discussions and other events. So a lot of time and money and effort has to be put to just go and knock to the doors of the people, and then you can get very, very different opinions of what is important.
Hey, thank you, Anu, for this comment. So I would like now to give the floor to Guido, who is a planner, but now also the developer, trying to develop offshore wind energy in Estonia. And we have heard that this actually has been one of the bottlenecks why plan is not yet adopted in Estonia. So is it because of non-respect of local values? Wasn't it too much listening of the local people about their values? How do you see how to proceed, how to enhance this?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for this meeting and inviting here. Yeah, I was 20 years a planner and environmental impact assessment expert, but now last 4 years developer. Maybe because I think that it's more practical not to advise and consult, but try to do best offshore wind farm. Maybe in the world, maybe only best in Estonia. I think both tasks are quite high. Yeah, Marine Spatial Plan has, of course, some problems, but I don't think that it's because of certain project. Probably the main problem is something changing of paradigm, that Estonia and all Europe and world is changing from fossil fuels to climate neutral energy production. And of course, you can't do, and marine offshore wind farm is technology which exists and which must be used for that. We don't have any small non-polluting device which can create energy. We need this technology we have. Also in Estonia, we must build offshore wind farms and do it in the best possible way, but we can't do it in the way that it's not visible from somewhere. Of course, visual impact is something which will be there, but we must avoid as much a problem as possible, and it's starting actually from site selection. My background is also geography, as many of speakers today. So site selection is the main issue, let's say. If you select site which have already strong potential conflict, then it's very hard to do offshore wind farm. So I think in our Saaremaa offshore wind farm, we from very beginning avoided those strong conflicts. We selected site as few seals, birds, bats, fishes, and everybody else not human, and also as minimum activities, human activities. And other most important thing is that we say that the wind we are using to produce welfare and benefit it's must blow also for local people, for local community, and for shareholders. And you must know the local conditions. Not all solutions working in everywhere. So I think in Saaremaa we looking for different solutions where and how we can help local community, the island of Saaremaa. And for example, if we build offshore wind farm and we have grid over the Saaremaa, how to connect local electrical grid 110 kilovolt to 330 kilovolt to open new opportunities for new business. Of course, next thing is let's have a service port in Saaremaa. Maybe we create 100, maybe 200 very good jobs in Saaremaa for people who have moved out from Saaremaa. The population in Saaremaa is decreasing, as for example, Anu told us from North Estonia. It's the same in Saaremaa. Of course, summertime, it's perfect place, a lot of tourists and nice, but it's also November and October and December in Saaremaa, and it's a totally different place. So it's not only one solution that let's give money for locals. It's a lot of different things how you can support that, but you must think about it in every moment if you are developer also. So respect of the locals and local conditions, looking for a win-win solution in not in one place but in many ways, and be ready to share the benefits. I think those are the keywords of the good solution. I can tell another 2 hours, but I stop here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Guido. So you pointed out about the importance of site selection as well as this visual impact, and that's what has been really looked in Latvian case study, and that's why I would like to ask also for some reflection from my colleague Anda on this site selection aspect, how that plays a role in respecting local values or addressing local values, not only environmental and nature values.
Yes, thank you, Kristina. That was exactly the point what I would be happy to follow up. And as coming from the nature science perspective, this site selection issue is very close to my heart. And I see that it's really right what how also Guido described this when it's important to take into account this different kind of conditions, values, and aspects already in pre-describing possible areas for wind park development or other developments in the sea, and therefore, like we do MSP on a national level, and we are assessing different ecological values, habitat distribution, bird migration. We do it at national level. I see it's also important to address landscape values on a national level to identify these areas of national importance of unique landscapes, which could be taken into account already when defining potential options where to wind parks could be located or not. And so this would ease later on discussion on particular development projects, ideas, and potentially avoid serious conflicts and problems with local values. And this probably should combine this national perspective of also having a whole nation's perspective of what is important for us with the local people's perspective. And I guess here's this various tools of collecting national interests and local interests, also using these digital tools has a good potential. Actually, in our Latvian case, we also based this landscape uniqueness assessment on results of a bigger national scale project, which was Landscape Treasures, initiated by our ministry, but where all Latvian people had the opportunity to submit their proposal for their important landscapes. And based on this people's votes, this landscape treasures were identified, which we also in our case study used as a criteria for landscape uniqueness. But I would see that we would need really a proper geographer's approach to defining this national importance landscapes to consider. But on the other side, I also promote this very much, this local perspective of, to consider all local interests, particularly the place identity at national scale. It's I agree with also with Anu that it's something really difficult, and but that probably comes into place when discussing really particular development projects to discuss them as close as possible to people which to whom the project is impacting, and to see how the potential new development would impact this place identity, since if it is a visual impact, it definitely has an impact on this place identity. So this is already local scale interactions, which probably comes into place with particular projects.
Okay, thank you, Anda, for this reflection. You mentioned the term locals are impacted. Andrea, you commented that locals are problem owners. So are they really problem owners? Or actually they are victims? How do you look at, and where the role of local values come in?
I think this depends very much on also how do they see themselves. And I would say, and this is what I try to lift a little bit, it's not just the locals who are the problem owners. It's also those who are in power or who have the solutions, or they are maybe the solution owners. But in principle, this is exactly about connecting those who are outsiders, who are contributing to the situation, with those who are in the place. And what beats me to somehow extent is that we really need to connect across scales. We need to connect the very general national marine spatial planning with this very concrete local level. And we need to connect between the more strategic thinking and the visionary thinking to concrete measures. And this becomes very clear with the Veidemane, where do you steer the kite surfers so they don't destroy nature? Or how do you create jobs in a rural area where the old people are still there, but the young people, the educated people are in the cities because there's no economic income. So somehow I'm thinking of something that is very much emphasized also in rural development literature, that you need to somehow get the individuals, which are the local capital, to get engaged, but you also need inspiration from outside, and you need an enabling context. And by having these three things together, and by also connecting different actors in society, this is something where you can get, so to say, the wheel turning. And I think the idea of climate change and ocean acidification, we really have to think about that and of the impacts in these areas. And probably, I also heard from the Polish context that the environmental awareness is probably not so high. But I think for these people who live in these areas, climate change will soon become very, very perceptible, and they will need to and want to work with that. So, and here I think the scientists, and that's what I liked what Anna was saying, in principle, they can be a little bit ambassadors and translators to make things understandable to the planners and to the natural scientists, and be some kind of a link, the social scientists out there in the small context. So I think we need to somehow connect these different actors, and also maybe counteract. I see some strong power balances that also need to be addressed. On one hand, it's the economic power balance between the outsiders and the insiders, the tourists and those who live in the place, those who own the places that make a lot of money, and also the political decision makers. So this is also something that needs to be worked with. And then I was thinking about the visions, that you need both a local vision, but you need to somehow cluster these visions at different levels to get this kind of driving force. This is what we want to achieve, and we want to achieve it together. Yes, I play over the ball to the next in the panel.
Thank you, Andrea. Really, developing tools was also one of the tasks or ambition of my German colleagues, but you also addressed the heat wave issue and interest of tourists or a change in tourism flow due to increase of temperature and sunny days in North Germany. So can you share a little bit also that aspect, how you cooperate then with municipality and what municipality can do, how they can act in such conditions when temperatures are rising and tourism flow is increasing? Damian?
Yes. Well, of course, against heat, there's a limited number of options that is available. You cannot change the weather, which is good, I think. But when we look at Siemen Island and at the touristic hotspots, we had made some kind of we had made up some ideas to how to compensate large heat. For example, at the basic main beach where most of people stay, there are almost no trees, no shadows available. There is no drinking water available for everyone. You need to buy it. So a suggestion at this point was to plant trees and to make secure that everybody who is affected by the heat can have a place in the shadow. This is just one example. And also in downtown Burg, which is the capital of Fehmarn, there is a lot of traffic jam going on, which is also not very good when you are under heat stress. So it would be, we would recommend to block the cars from the city center, at least in the summer season. These are just two examples, but the measures have to be discussed with locals, with tourism boards, with all kinds of stakeholders. So in the end, these debates have started, but climate adaptation is not yet in the center of the debate.
Yes, thank you for this reflection and sharing experience. So there was one more point or comment made by Guido about benefits for local people from new developments, and that money is not always, how to say, the critical aspect in discussion to allow project to come or not to come, so that there are much more beyond these financial issues. It's a little bit in contradiction what is happening in Poland, if I'm right. So what you were commenting, that actually the decision on new developments are not so much built on local values, if I'm right, Tymon. And
yes, you're right. Yes, you're right, but I think we're in a very specific situation now because the central government does a lot of strange things, and I'm sure you must have heard many of them. So this also reflects on the marine spatial planning issues. What I think locally is neglected is sharing good practices, sharing success stories, showing good examples from other parts of the world that marine spatial planning provides a lot of benefits for people. People are not aware of it, and it's just a matter of in my opinion, providing positive pictures rather than just leaving the very vague term marine spatial planning. And actually, in my opinion, it is a case of many types of discussions with local people. Instead of showing them good examples, we sort of scare them even though it's not our intention, but that's how it is absorbed by the people.
So still communication is another keyword here today with local people. And what I also picked up once more from Andreas, that we shouldn't be too strict in dividing between levels, and might be there is this new approach, multi-level governance, should be promoted much more. And during this MSP forum, there is another workshop on this topic. So might be we can come in, go to that workshop and also initiate discussion about how about the local values in this multi-level governance. So which is actually the topic of Landsea Act project as well. So we should contribute also to that aspect. It would be very interesting to know what's happening with word cloud. Can we see it in a moment? Traditions is a key word. What is your opinion on that, about traditions? That we should respect traditions in decision making. So,
if I may, in Poland, it's totally overused these days, and it's not like, I have a lot against the traditions themselves, but if they are in contradiction to rational thinking, then I think that's not right.
Andrea?
I think there is a difference between conservatism and being aware of traditions and being aware of traditional linkages of people to their own landscape of use. And in that sense, I think there's also possibilities to create new traditions. And maybe this is about inviting out the people from outside to together create new traditions that link to the place and link across governance levels and link across different scales of management and of course of also economic and political action.
Of course.
Yes. Anu, you are studying traditions and you have had several research projects on that as well, on cultural heritage aspects.
Yes, and I think especially the fishermen community has been very interesting, that it's not very large, and also they are afraid that they are dying out because no new young fishermen are growing up. So traditions, I think, we have traditions in architecture that you can still somehow preserve and have modern functions. And we were also looking at, can you buy local fish in the coastal area, and it's sometimes very, very difficult in Estonia that you have to know the fisherman and you have to have the mobile number of the fisherman so you can get your fresh fish. And also the seasonality of the summer restaurants, that this is also some kind of local entrepreneurship that would be sort of gatekeepers persons, that you have ideas that seasonal gastronomy is a big thing, I think, everywhere. And it's slowly gaining popularity in Estonia too. But then, again, I think actually fishermen were also very good in addressing climate change, because they really see how climate is affecting their catch. And so, so the traditions are important, but also, how to negotiate so that you will preserve the old, but you are also accepting something new. And coming back to Anda's comments, I think also, and how to do this multi-level governance, I think in Estonian Public MSP Forum, there was a discussion between participants also that we have done valuable landscapes on land, but we haven't done valuable landscapes like Polish colleagues are doing in this project to map the sea areas. So in Latvia, you a little bit did this as well, that this connects the local knowledge and values, and you have some kind of formal output if you have these seascapes mapped. And then you can take it into consideration in higher levels of planning as well. So maybe this would be some kind of a tool to advance in the future.
Anu, I see Guido has risen his hand also to contribute about Estonian traditions.
Yes, just a small comment that, of course, traditions are very important, but we must evaluate different traditions. In Estonia, for example, we have a tradition of 100 years to burn oil shale and produce 15,000 tons of CO2 per person per year, which is, I think, a tradition we can change. We must change. So traditions are important, but not just blindly. Thank you.
Okay, I see we have diversities of views here in our panel. Yes, Andrea, and then Anda.
Thank you. I was thinking of the Swedish fishermen, Swedish coastal fishermen and Swedish islanders. I'm myself living on an island. And for islanders, it is to survive and to survive in a long-term perspective, multifunctionality and being a Jack or a Jane of many trades is actually really important because this provides flexibility. It can also be vulnerable sometimes because, and you can get really stressed because you have to do different things in different places at the same time. But I think the multifunctionality and the principles of coexistence are maybe some two principles that we should think about when we are thinking about the future and keeping spaces open and looking at how can we combine things or in time, in space, and instead of only reserving areas for certain uses. That's a thought that beats me now when I listen to this discussion and the points made here.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, for contribution. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. If we would be here in Riga in some hotel, we would continue our discussion till the evening reception, but here we are a little bit limited, and I really would like to thank you very much for presentations and for engagement in this afterwards discussion. But one more last concluding remark, I would like to give floor to my colleague Anda.
Thank you for this opportunity to finalize this discussion. So I just wanted to add to this word cloud, as I didn't have the possibility to do it online, to add my vote for place identity, because I think it merges this concepts of traditions, landscape, and cultural heritage, and it brings it really to this local level. And so I guess this place identity is something also important concept which to consider more in such lengthy interaction discussion, and also to find a place for that in maritime spatial planning.
I can only agree with your wise words, and would like to encourage you also to participate tomorrow in the workshop on multi-level governance and make local values very strong in that workshop as well. And thank you for participation.